Hello all my friends, wow what a sight! Scientists recently found ancient artifacts near King Tut's tomb. Turns out his final resting place looks more like a public cemetery, with about a dozen wooden coffins buried there around 3,600 years ago. Okay, maybe I exaggerated a bit. The 11 tombs weren't right next to King Tut, but they were close to Luxor. These new discoveries in Egyptian tombs might help us understand what life was like in ancient Egypt. And guess what? It seems like the ancient Egyptians were surprisingly similar to us modern folks. For example, it looks like women have always loved jewelry. Archaeologists found a beautifully crafted necklace made of 30 amethyst beads, 2 agate beads, and a pendant shaped like a hippo's head. I bet that was all the rage back then. Researchers also found 2 copper mirrors. One had a lotus-shaped handle, and the other was decorated with Hathor, the ancient Egyptian goddess of the sky, women, fertility, and love. These recent digs near King Tut's burial site led to another incredible discovery. For the first time in thousands of years, parts of Queen Hatshepsut's Valley Temple were unearthed. She's believed to have been the second female pharaoh, known for ruling with courage and wisdom, leaving behind a legacy as strong as stone. Her temple, hidden for centuries, gives us a peek into a time full of power, intrigue, and spiritual devotion. Archaeologists found over 1,000 beautifully decorated stone blocks around Hatshepsut's secret temple. Not many women in ancient Egypt made it to the throne, but they also uncovered a nearby tomb that belonged to the queen's palace supervisor, a man named Jehudi Mes. Looks like Queen Hatshepsut had more burial sites too, like the upper area of Kurnet Murai. These tombs were carved into rock rather than built as pyramids, showing us a different ancient view on how to protect the soul in the afterlife. Experts managed to recover some amazing items from the site, including clay toys, mummy masks, winged scarabs, and various amulets. Unfortunately, there were probably many more artifacts, but over the centuries, people who weren't archaeologists stumbled upon the site. Likely looters got there first and took some of the valuable pieces. Still, they left behind some great finds for researchers, like pottery used to offer bread and meat, and archers' bows connecting the tomb's owners to the Egyptian military. At the same time, protecting the soul was considered way more important than you might think, especially if you're wandering around Luxor looking for ancient secrets. You're not scared of King Tut's curse, are you? Let me tell you what happened to those who weren't scared, but promise me you'll take it seriously, okay? For years, Egyptologists, especially those who believed in supernatural stuff, were convinced there was a spooky curse surrounding the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb. This belief came from the mysterious and early deaths of several of the people who first opened the tomb in 1922. There was no clear explanation for why they died, so many chalked it up to some ancient curse instead of looking deeper. But turns out it wasn't a curse at all. Most likely it was radiation that killed those early explorers. Now you might be wondering, where did the radiation come from? After all, radioactivity was only discovered in the 19th century, and the ancient Egyptians, despite their awesome pyramids, didn't have radium to make King Tut's tomb glow in the dark. So what's the real story? It might have been toxic waste. Dangerous levels of radiation, possibly from uranium or other hazardous materials, had been lurking in the tomb ever since it was sealed over 3,000 years ago. It's said that the burial chamber inside King Tut's tomb has such high radiation levels that anyone stepping inside could end up with a deadly dose or a disease that can't be cured. And by the way, if you've got moldy leftovers rotting in your fridge from last month, you might be sitting on a mini radiation zone of your own, just slightly less deadly. But radiation isn't just a problem in King Tut's tomb. Digging up ancient Egyptian artifacts can be exciting but dangerous, because unusually high radiation levels have been found in Old Kingdom tombs across Egypt. Geiger counters picked up radiation at 2 sites near the Giza pyramids, and radon gas, a radioactive substance, was found in several underground tombs in Saqqara. Interestingly, experts think the builders of these ancient tombs actually knew something about toxins. Many tomb walls have creepy warnings carved into them. One inscription reads, "Whoever disturbs this tomb will die from an illness no doctor can diagnose." Another ominous message simply says, "Forbidden." A den of evil spirits? Just another reason people feared the cursed tombs. Creepy warnings carved into tomb walls only added to the fear that these ancient sites were haunted by supernatural curses. Archaeologists have been spooked by these ominous signs for ages, but the real fear kicked in about a century ago when Lord Carnarvon, the man who funded the excavation of King Tut's tomb in 1922, died mysteriously. He'd entered the tomb with several others to explore what they hoped was a treasure trove. Another British Egyptologist, Arthur Weigel, who was there when the tomb was first opened and is said to have started the whole curse legend, died young, in his 50s, in 1934. There's a good chance radiation exposure played a role in his death. In total, 6 of the 26 people present when the tomb was opened died within 10 years, each from different causes, not just radiation exposure. Some died from suffocation, strokes, heart failure, pneumonia, or even poisoning. Grim, right? One man, though, opened the tomb and somehow dodged the infamous curse, Howard Carter, or at least that's how it seemed. Some pointed to his survival as proof the curse wasn't real. After excavating the tomb, Carter published several books about it and later moved from archaeology into the trade of antiquities for museums. Even though he didn't die or fall ill, rumors still swirled that the curse affected him in other ways. One story linked him romantically to Lord Carnarvon's daughter, Evelyn. Some said he was madly in love with her, but she married someone else, so Carter chose to remain single. Others claimed the two had a secret love affair in Egypt, which ended when her father died and she left the country. But none of these rumors had solid evidence. In reality, Evelyn was only 6 years old when she met Carter, and they remained friends until his death. She was one of the few people at his funeral, but denied any romantic connection, saying they were never that close. A year after King Tut's tomb was discovered, Evelyn married politician Sir Brograve Beauchamp and had a daughter with him. That same year, Beauchamp and his parents visited the tomb, guided by Carter himself. Carter never married, and apart from the gossip about Evelyn, he had no known romantic relationships. So while the curse makes for an exciting twist to his story, Carter was known to keep his distance from people long before he ever set foot in the tomb. He just wasn't very social. In 1939, after battling a serious illness, Carter finally passed away at the age of 64, which back then was the average life expectancy in the UK. Nobody really blamed his death on the curse, but when he died, it was discovered he had several artifacts from King Tut's tomb in his London apartment. Those were eventually returned to Egypt, and for many that marked the end of the curse. Still, who knows? Maybe if he hadn't kept all those ancient souvenirs in his home, he would have lived even longer. As for the other deaths, some of them might not have been so mysterious after all. But the curse theory likely gained traction because of the weird stuff that happened during the dig. Carnarvon, for instance, got a mosquito bite that turned badly infected. Around the time they opened the tomb, Cairo experienced a sudden power outage during a bizarre sandstorm. Back in England, Carnarvon's dog, Susie, ran off and began barking hysterically at seemingly nothing. Family and staff swore that at the exact moment her owner's heart stopped, Susie let out a chilling howl and collapsed, dead, without any visible cause. So maybe radiation wasn't the main problem after all. Maybe those ancient relics from King Tut's tomb really did have some kind of power. Creepy, huh? Unlike many other tombs in ancient Egypt, King Tutankhamun's resting place remained untouched by looters for over 3,000 years. One reason is that the tomb was smaller than average and hidden away in the Valley of the Kings. By the time anyone started digging around there, the tomb's entrance had been completely buried under rubble from the construction of a nearby tomb, which definitely helped keep it secret. There weren't even any markings or inscriptions outside to give it away. Time itself played a huge role in preserving it so well until the 1920s, when a man named Howard Carter finally broke through. But was Carter really the great hero people made him out to be? Some recent findings suggest he may have been more cunning than originally thought. People used to believe he wasn't just some treasure hunter. He was seen as a genuine archaeologist. He had been obsessed with Egyptian artifacts since he was young, sketching carvings and inscriptions from ancient tombs long before the King Tut discovery. After finding Tutankhamun's remains, Carter spent the next decade carefully cataloging and preserving everything, from golden thrones and statues to chariots and even the pharaoh's boat. So officially, the artifacts were sent down the Nile to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. That was the story at least, but more recent discoveries suggest not everything made it into the hands of the Egyptian authorities. Apparently, a secret letter reveals Carter had a little policy of 10 for them, 1 for me. The letter in question was sent to Sir Alan Gardner, a linguist and a friend of Carter's, and it dates back to 1922. In it, Carter talks about discovering the tomb and asks his friend for advice. In another letter from 1934, Gardner appears to thank Carter for a protective amulet that Carter had sent as a gift. Carter insisted it wasn't from Tutankhamun's tomb, but it obviously was. Even the British director of the Egyptian Museum knew something shady was going on with Carter but couldn't prove it. When he compared Gardner's amulet to another one from the tomb, they were exactly the same. Gardner was apparently so frustrated about being dragged into this awkward position that he vented to Carter in another letter. Still, he chose to be a loyal friend and didn't rat Carter out. Instead, he advised him to return the stolen artifact to Cairo. Just like how we're now advised to like this video and subscribe to Brightside for more amazing history stories. Yes, that was in the original, and yes, it sounds like an ad. Anyway, that wasn't the only suspicious thing Carter may have done after the big discovery. In 1947, a man named Alfred Lucas, who had worked with a controversial archaeologist, shared some info in an obscure Cairo journal. He claimed Carter had secretly opened the burial chamber door by himself before the official reveal, then sealed it up again like nothing ever happened. Why would he do that? According to this theory, Carter and his team may have gone in early to get their hands on some of the valuables. Of course, they couldn't risk selling anything while they were alive, but they apparently planned to auction them off after their deaths. Carter never admitted to any of this, but he also never officially denied it. Either way, the Egyptian government wasn't willing to take chances. They banned him from the tomb for a while. Some people even linked this supposed theft to King Tut's curse. If you haven't heard of it, it became a super spooky story right after the tomb's discovery. The idea was that anyone who messed with the boy king's resting place would suffer terrible bad luck. It's not like a mummy would come storming out on a killing spree, but there were definitely rumors about mysterious and sudden deaths among those who entered the tomb. The most famous early death blamed on the curse was that of George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, the wealthy British aristocrat who funded the whole search for the tomb. He died just a year after it was opened. People love calling it mysterious, but the truth is, Herbert was already in poor health when he arrived in Cairo, and he died of a pretty standard illness. Let's look at the numbers. There were tons of people involved in opening the tomb. Security guards, archaeologists, support staff. And yeah, some of them died not too long after the tomb was opened to the public. While we'd love to believe in a dramatic ancient curse, it makes for a great story. Statistically, if you've got a group of people involved in something like this, it's not shocking that a few of them would die by chance. On average, the people supposedly cursed lived more than 20 years after the tomb was opened. Lord Carnarvon's daughter even lived into the 1980s, half a century later, and Carter himself lived until 1939, 16 years after the discovery. Some have suggested the entire curse thing was just a clever PR move. When the tomb was discovered, Carter wanted to keep nosy journalists at bay, so maybe he came up with the idea of a scary curse to make them back off. But let's get back to what was actually taken from King Tut's tomb. Mainly it seems to have been jewelry, and it might have been Carter who stole it. A French researcher did some deep digging by studying old photographs from inside the tomb taken back in the 1920s. He compared those photos to items that later turned up in museums and auction houses. Before long, he started piecing together where some of Tut's jewelry had ended up. For example, there was a necklace that had rested on Tut's chest. It was shattered into pieces. Some parts, passed through Carter's hands, ended up at the Nelson Atkins Museum in Missouri. Other pieces showed up in another necklace that anonymous individuals tried to sell in 2015, but the sale didn't go through. Even the Nelson Atkins Museum has acknowledged this connection on its website. Then there were parts of Tut's headdress, some beads. It looks like Carter also took another item that seemed to belong to King Tut. It ended up being strung into a necklace that's now on display at the St. Louis Art Museum. Another fancy collar made of glazed ceramic charms spent some time at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. Luckily, it was returned to Egypt a little over a decade ago. And yes, you guessed it, this one was also apparently stolen by Carter. But putting the missing artifacts aside, King Tutankhamun's tomb still gave us a ton of amazing items that taught us more about this incredible ancient culture. Let's start with the most famous one, his golden burial mask. It's a stunning 21-inch masterpiece made of gold, inlaid with semi-precious stones and colored glass paste. It weighs 22 pounds and shows the young pharaoh with a long beard and a headdress topped by a cobra and a vulture. On the back of the mask is a spell from an ancient Egyptian religious book meant to help him function just as well in the afterlife as he did in this one. Apparently, Tut was also into board games. Archaeologists found 4 board games in his tomb, some made from ivory. They also uncovered a pair of golden sandals, though let's be honest, they were probably more for show than for comfort. In fact, Tut likely never wore them during his life. Speaking of fashion, it turns out Tut was a pretty stylish ruler. They even found a mannequin in his tomb that he used to select, tailor, and store his clothes and jewelry. It seems the boy king also enjoyed music. Archaeologists discovered 2 trumpets in his tomb. They were actually played in a BBC broadcast back in 1935, but today the instruments are way too fragile to handle. Have you ever heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally forced historians to rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans created a mysterious masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before Göbekli Tepe was discovered, archaeologists thought ancient people had no clue about working with iron and weren't very good at pottery. Everyone assumed that humans only started settling down once farming came into the picture. But Göbekli Tepe flipped that idea on its head. It showed that temples, not farming, might have been the real reason people began living in one place. Professor Klaus Schmidt, the man behind the discovery, was the one who changed this long-held theory. He was able to prove that hunter-gatherer communities were the ones who laid the groundwork for this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists had visited the area, but they totally missed the point. They stumbled upon a hill scattered with limestone slabs and figured it was just a medieval cemetery. Little did they know what was actually hiding beneath the surface. In 1994, Schmidt started his own survey of prehistoric sites in the region, and surprise, he immediately realized he'd found something truly extraordinary. Unlike the flat, dry plateaus nearby, Göbekli Tepe had a slightly rounded hilltop that rose 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the name of the place actually translates to Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure this was something only humans could have built, but what really got his attention were the broken limestone pieces that everyone thought were just old gravestones. It was like finding buried treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt and his team were about to dive into the secrets beneath the surface. To their surprise, they didn't find any signs of a settlement. No cooking fires, no houses, and none of the clay figurines you'd usually see at nearby sites of similar age. But they did find that these ancient people were using tools, like stone hammers. So Schmidt and the crew started making educated guesses about the age of the stone structures. Radiocarbon dating backed up their estimate. Slowly, the ancient vibe of the place started to make sense. It was like piecing together a giant puzzle. Now you might think that people back then didn't have the right tools to build something as impressive as Göbekli Tepe, but that's not true. These prehistoric builders used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were skilled at carving the softer limestone and shaping it into columns on the spot. After that, they carried the pillars a short distance to the hilltop and stood them upright. Once the stone circles were complete, they buried them under layers of dirt. Over time, they built more circles on top, and voila, they created a stunning mound to amaze future generations. In their first year of digging, the team examined 15,000 animal bones, all from wild creatures. These people didn't have pets or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals to eat. But things were about to change because the site had everything they'd need to kickstart farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could easily be domesticated. Guess what? Just 20 meters away from the main site, geneticists found evidence of the world's earliest domesticated wheat in a prehistoric village. This incredible discovery completely changed how we think about civilization. In the past, experts believed that people had to learn how to farm and settle down before they could build temples or form complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research turned that idea upside down. He suggested that the massive effort it took to build these amazing stone structures actually led to the development of advanced societies. In other words, social and cultural changes came before farming. Schmidt had a fascinating theory about Göbekli Tepe. He thought it might have been a special burial site where people came to leave their loved ones. And that's where the big shift comes in. This burial site was decorated with beautiful statues and symbolic carvings representing gods from the spiritual world. The idea that Göbekli Tepe might have been a sacred place adds a whole new layer of depth to the story. While we may never know the exact purpose of the site, Schmidt's insights challenge us to think deeply about the connection between the afterlife and the respect ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their ancestors. Now let's talk about the real showstoppers, those stunning T-shaped pillars that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious stone structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and are believed to represent stylized human figures. But one pillar stands out from the rest. It features a three-dimensional carving of a lion that really sparks the imagination. Why? Because it suggests that lions may have once roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic era. The standing stones are arranged in circles and placed into rectangular pits. Each circle follows a similar setup. Two massive T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Pretty sleek design, right? These towering columns reach up to 16 feet high and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some of the pillars are simple and bare, while others are like full-on works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures seem to come alive, crawling and twisting along the surfaces of the stones. But it's not just animals. Some pillars show abstract shapes representing humans, even small carvings of clothing and belts. One pillar in particular is the true rock star. It seems to depict a comet crashing into Earth, an event that kicked off a 1,000-year cold period. Previous studies of ice cores in Greenland hinted at this theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe seem to confirm it. It's like these stone carvings form an ancient comic strip, telling a dramatic story. One figure even appears headless. Researchers fed images of the carvings into a computer, which revealed they match up with constellations, suggesting that this site may have been an ancient observatory. It's as if our ancestors were recording this catastrophic event in their own symbolic, creative way. Since the mid-1990s, archaeologists have been digging into Göbekli Tepe, peeling back the layers of time and helping us better understand how all these different elements, ritual, culture, architecture, astronomy, were connected. And guess what? They don't plan on stopping for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll discover? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled a purely ritual site. No signs of daily living activities like cooking or homes. People used to think the lack of water meant it couldn't support even semi-permanent settlements. But now scientists are saying it's time to rethink all that. Maybe a group of people did live nearby, not staying in one place year-round but moving around a little while, still maintaining a stable cultural presence in the area. Göbekli Tepe isn't just home to one temple, it's actually a breathtaking complex of more than 20 ancient buildings. And as archaeologists dig deeper into these ancient wonders, they're uncovering a unique design. Each structure has two prominent central pillars, surrounded by smaller stones and dividing walls. What next? Subscribe to uncover more forgotten history. Like, comment, and help us on our journey to reveal the truth behind the world's ancient mysteries.